A German officer caught this starving Jewish pianist hiding in the ruins of Warsaw. Władysław was certain he was about to die. After all, this was World War II. But instead, the officer asked him one question: "What did you do before the war?" When Władysław answered, "I was a pianist," the officer pointed him toward a piano and told him to play. But who was this man, and how did he end up hiding alone in the middle of German-occupied Warsaw, while almost everyone he knew had either been captured or killed? To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning. Warsaw, September 1939. Władysław Szpilman is sitting at a piano inside a radio studio, completely unbothered. Then the windows start exploding. All the workers starts running out to save their lives. That's when he sees his friend Jurek. Jurek introduces him to his sister Dorota, who is a cellisto, and they immediately fall in love at first sight. At home, his family is not doing much better in the survival department. The Szpilmans are 6 people crammed into one apartment: Father Samuel, Mother Edwarda, Brother Henryk, older sister Regina, younger sister Halina, and Władysław. When the news breaks that Britain and France have declared war on Germany in response to the invasion, the whole family throws an actual celebration dinner, convinced the Nazis are about to get stomped by the Allies within weeks. They are so confident they cancel their own evacuation plans. Big surprise, the Allies did not show up. Diplomatic statements do not stop tanks, and Warsaw falls into full occupation before the family even finishes digesting that celebratory meal. From there, the walls close in fast, literally and figuratively. New German regulations drop one after another. Jewish families are only allowed to keep 2,000 zlotys in cash. Everything else has to go into a German bank or get seized outright, and the Szpilmans happen to be sitting on just over 5,000. Cue a very tense family debate about where to hide the extra money, with everyone throwing out ideas like stuffing it in a flower pot, taping it under the table, or shoving it inside a violin case. Władysław, somehow still holding on to some normalcy, is going on a date with Dorota. The two of them try to grab a coffee together, only to discover Jews are now banned from cafes. Parks too. So their idea of a date becomes standing awkwardly on a street corner, because that is the one place the Nazis have not gotten around to banning yet. More rules follow in quick succession. Jews must wear a Star of David armband in public. They have to remove their hats and bow to any Nazi they pass, and they are no longer allowed to walk on the sidewalk, only in the gutter. Samuel gets slapped across the face by a German officer simply for failing to step off the sidewalk fast enough, and not a single bystander dares to step in and help. That is the new normal now, and it only gets darker from here. Money runs out almost instantly. The family is down to less than 20 zlotys, not even enough for a few days of potatoes, so they start selling off their belongings. The most valuable thing in the house is Władysław's piano, and merchants know exactly how desperate the family is, lowballing them down to 2,000 zlotys. A piano cannot be eaten, so Władysław swallows the insult and sells it anyway. Then the real gut punch lands. The Nazis order all 500,000 Jews in Warsaw to relocate into a sealed-off ghetto by the end of October 1940. On moving day, Władysław crosses paths with Dorota in the chaos of the crowd. They exchange a quick, sad goodbye, and that is that. The apartment waiting for the Szpilmans in the ghetto is small and run down, but livable, right up until the Nazis finish building walls around the entire district and turn it into a sealed cage. Inside, it is instant survival of the fittest. Starved bodies start showing up on the sidewalks like it is just part of the scenery now. To bring in money, Władysław and Henryk start selling books on the street, and business is rough because reading is not exactly a priority when you are trying not to starve. One evening, a well-dressed, suspiciously healthy-looking childhood friend shows up at their door. Turns out the Nazis need Jews to police the ghetto for them, and this old friend wants the brothers to sign up. Henryk, hot-headed as ever, tells him where he can shove that offer, and the guy leaves looking personally offended that they would not want to help oppress their own neighbors. Władysław eventually lands a gig playing piano in a restaurant owned by a man named Benek, but the pay is barely enough to survive on, because peacetime is when people care about music, not while they are being systematically starved. While out one evening, he watches a small child crawl out through a hole in the ghetto wall to steal food, only to get caught and beaten to death by soldiers on the other side. Władysław drags the boy's body back through, calling out for any sign of life, but there is none. He has to walk away and keep moving, because grief is a luxury nobody in the ghetto can afford. That very same night, Władysław's own family witnesses the horror that opens this whole story. Nazi soldiers storm into the apartment across the street, and when the elderly man in the wheelchair cannot stand to salute them, they simply throw him off the balcony. His family is marched marched downstairs and forced to run down the street, while the soldiers turn on their headlights and open fire, treating them like a live-action carnival game after dinner. Not one person survives. This is the world Władysław's family is now living inside. Understandably shaken, Władysław comes home and sits down at a piano to try to process it, and that is when his sister bursts in with news that Henryk has just been arrested for taking part in a protest. Desperate, Władysław goes crawling to the old childhood friend, now working as a Jewish policeman, and begs him to get Henryk released. The guy is clearly not thrilled about it, but agrees. While they wait outside, they witness an old man mug an elderly woman for her food, and she cannot even fight him off. She can only weakly smack him with her hat as he wolfs it down on the ground in front of her. Nobody steps in to help her either. When Henryk finally gets released, instead of thanking his brother, he is furious that Władysław pulled strings for him at all. Big talk from a guy who shortly after gets too weak from hunger to even walk, and Władysław ends up half carrying him to the restaurant just to get him fed. Over that meal, Henryk drops the next piece of bad news. The Nazis are planning to start shipping ghetto residents out to concentration camps, and the only way to stay behind is with a work permit. The family manages to secure permits for everyone except their father. Just when it looks hopeless, Władysław runs into a resistance contact named Majorek, who helps him land a permit for Samuel at the last possible second. It does not matter. In March 1942, Nazi soldiers swept through and started herding huge numbers of Jews toward the camps anyway. Work permits mean nothing to them. When Władysław tries to show his family's paperwork, he gets backhanded for the trouble. That night, everyone is forced to line up outside. A woman who simply asks where they are being taken gets shot on the spot as her answer. And after that, nobody dares say another word. The next morning, the whole crowd is marched into a public square. Others search frantically for family members they have already lost in the chaos. In the middle of all this, they spot Henryk and his sisters, who were taken the night before for forced labor, but have wandered back just to be near the family one more time. A woman nearby is sobbing uncontrollably because, while hiding from the soldiers, her baby started to cry. And to keep the whole group from being discovered, she had to cover the infant's mouth until it suffocated. And in the middle of literal genocide, there is still a kid walking around trying to sell candy. Samuel spends the family's last 20 zlotys on a single piece of candy and carefully cuts it into 6 pieces with a pocket knife so that everyone gets a taste. None of them know it yet, but this is the last meal the Szpilman family will ever share together. Everyone is marched to the train station and packed into cattle cars like livestock, headed for what nobody yet understands is a death camp. Right as Władysław is being swept along in the crowd, his old friend Itzhak Heller, the one who took the police job, spots him and physically yanks him out of the line. Władysław tries to fight his way back toward his family, but the police hold him back, and his father can only manage a small, resigned wave goodbye. Heller shoves him to the ground and finally forces him to walk away, and that is the last time Władysław ever sees his parents or siblings. He returns to the ghetto to find it half-emptied, furniture and luggage scattered everywhere, like the aftermath of a stampede. Wandering in a daze, grieving, he ends up back at Benek's restaurant, where he discovers the owner hiding under a table who managed to avoid the roundup. Benek claims he has bribed a police officer to come get them out once the search dies down. Eventually, they do make it out, only to learn that the Nazis have kept a portion of the Jewish population behind specifically for forced labor. While working to tear down part of the ghetto wall one day, Władysław notices a young singer he recognizes, married to a close friend of his, but he does not dare risk greeting her with guards standing right there. Later, a German officer randomly pulls several laborers, Benek included, out of the work line, orders them to lie face down, and executes them one at a time, apparently to save on rations by thinning out anyone too old, sick, or weak to be useful. Władysław watches his boss die right there on the pavement. While hauling bricks one day, Władysław hears a familiar whistle. It is Majorek, letting him know quietly that the trains have been leaving full and coming back completely empty, meaning almost everyone sent away has already been murdered. Majorek has been secretly organizing resistance fighters, and after everything Władysław has lost, he does not hesitate to join. During a moment of distraction while watching Allied planes overhead, he accidentally knocks over a stack of bricks and gets beaten unconscious for it, but at least the guards do not shoot him. When word gets around that he used to be a professional pianist, his co-workers arrange for him to get shifted to lighter duty out of respect. Eventually, the Nazis start letting one laborer per day leave the site to buy potatoes and bread, and the resistance turns that errand into a smuggling operation, hiding weapons inside the food deliveries. Władysław becomes the one responsible for receiving the smuggled guns and passing them along to other fighters after dark. It is nerve-wracking work, and one day the Nazis grow suspicious enough to search him directly, but somehow find nothing. Realizing this cannot last, Władysław writes down his name and address and has Majorek pass it along to Polish friends outside the wall who might be able to help him disappear. When the moment finally comes, Władysław Władysław strips off his Star of David armband, blends into the Polish laborers instead of the Jewish ones, and simply walks out of the worksite. He is met by the singer he recognized earlier, who leads him to reunite with Andrzej and Janina, non-Jewish friends who take him in. After a much-needed bath and a proper meal, they move him to another apartment for safety, then eventually to a remote, empty flat where he is warned to stay completely silent no matter what. Before parting ways, they leave him a written address in case of emergency, which he hides in the sole of his shoe. Alone in that apartment, Władysław overhears a couple laughing and playing around in the next room, a small, ordinary sliver of joy he has not experienced in years. That moment does not last. An explosion outside snaps him back to reality. It is April 1943, and this is the beginning of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. Jewish fighters, badly outgunned and outnumbered, resist the Nazis fiercely for days before being crushed. Watching his fellow Poles die from a hidden window, knowing he personally smuggled some of the weapons they used, weighs on Władysław heavily. A friend visits briefly to bring food and share how the uprising has inspired the wider Polish resistance, only to later reveal that most of that same group has since been captured, meaning Władysław's hiding spot could be compromised too. He is told he should leave immediately, but he refuses to keep running. His contact warns him that if soldiers show up, jumping out the window is a better fate than being taken alive. Sure enough, a military vehicle pulls up outside not long after, and Władysław braces to jump, moving furniture out of the way just in case. But the soldiers only grab two people from a different apartment and drive off, leaving him shaking with relief. The relief does not last. With his contact gone, food runs out fast. While fumbling around for something to eat, Władysław knocks over a stack of dishes, and the noise draws an angry neighbor who threatens to call the police. He grabs what little he has and bolts down the stairs into the freezing night, wandering the streets until he finally remembers the address hidden in his shoe. He knocks, and the door opens to reveal Dorota, now visibly pregnant. It is an awkward, loaded reunion. 3 years ago, there might have been something real between them, and now she is married and about to be a mother while he is a fugitive with nothing. Fortunately, her husband Michal comes home shortly after, and despite some understandable wariness, welcomes Władysław warmly and promises to find him a safer hiding place the next day. The next morning, Władysław wakes to the sound of Dorota practicing cello, a small, aching reminder of the life he might have had if the war had never happened. After lunch, Michal takes him to a new apartment, this one directly across from Nazi SS regional headquarters and a hospital, on the logic that the most dangerous-looking address is actually the safest, since nobody would think to hide there. There is a dusty piano sitting in the corner of the flat, and once he is alone, Władysław cannot resist lifting the lid and sitting down at the keys for the first time in years. He does not dare actually press them, though, terrified of being heard, so he just hovers his fingers over the keyboard, silently playing music only he can hear. For a man who has lived and breathed the piano his entire life, that silence might be the cruelest torture of the whole war. Michal later introduces a resistance contact named Antek, who is supposed to keep Władysław supplied with food while he stays in hiding. Antek fills him in on the Allied bombing campaign against Germany and assures him the war is winding down. But Antek turns out to be wildly unreliable, disappearing for stretches at a time, cutting off supplies, and demanding money he does not really need, until Władysław has nothing left to give and Antek vanishes completely. Starving, Władysław is reduced to eating sprouted potatoes just to survive. Dorota and Michal eventually check on him and find him bedridden and near death. So Michal risks his own safety to sneak in a trusted doctor. Once it is confirmed Władysław is stable, the couple explains the real reason for their visit. With violence expected to erupt again soon, they are relocating to another city, and this is essentially a goodbye. By the time Władysław recovers enough to function, it is August 1944, and the Warsaw uprising has broken out, this time led by Polish resistance fighters targeting the SS headquarters right outside his window. For days, gunfire echoes through the building. Eventually, the building loses water and electricity, food runs out completely, and through the window, Władysław watches a female resistance fighter gunned down mid-sprint, collapsing in the street below. To crush the uprising, the Germans bring in tanks, and soon soldiers are ordering residents outside to evacuate the building. Problem is, Dorota Rhoda and Michal lock the apartment door from the outside for his safety, and now Władysław is trapped with no way out. Just as it looks like the end, a shell rips a hole through the wall, and he scrambles through it to escape. He hides in a shattered attic as the shelling continues, but German soldiers start searching the building, forcing him to climb out and cling to the edge of the roof by his fingertips. Nazis spot him from across the street, but thankfully he is too far away for a clean shot. Startled, he loses his grip and falls, landing on a balcony below instead of the pavement, an absurdly lucky break in an otherwise brutal stretch. He picks his way over bodies in the street and hides behind a row of trash cans until nightfall, then tries to cross the road under cover of darkness. Nazi footsteps approach mid-crossing, so he drops to the ground and plays dead until the patrol passes, then bolts into an abandoned hospital across the street, collapsing onto a dusty operating table. The next day, he wanders the empty hospital, so desperately thirsty that he scoops filthy water out of a bucket just to survive, and manages to scavenge a small amount of food. He hides out there for several days, thinking he might just be able to wait out the rest of the war in relative safety, until the Nazis start torching the ruins block by block. The fire spreads to his hiding spot fast, and he has to jump out a window to escape, injuring his leg on landing. Ignoring the pain, he climbs back into the now abandoned ghetto, once packed with 500,000 people, now completely silent and reduced to rubble, like walking through a ghost town built out of everything that used to be his life. With no time to dwell on it, he searches a semi-intact house for food and finds a jar of pickles. Just as he is struggling to pry it open, a German officer walks in and finds him. Władysław is certain this is finally the end. Instead, the officer, oddly calm, asks what he used to do for a living before the war. When Władysław admits he was a pianist, the officer leads him to a grand piano in the house and tells him to play something. Władysław has not touched a keyboard in 5 years. His hands are cracked and shaking from cold and starvation, but the instincts are still there. He sits down and plays Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor, starting shaky and uncertain before building into something powerful, almost defiant, every ounce of grief and rage from the last 5 years pouring out through his fingers. By the time the final notes fade, the officer stands, straightens his uniform, and offers him a quiet nod of respect, one that says more than words could. After learning Władysław has been sheltering in the attic, the officer personally escorts him back there and lights the way with his flashlight. Before leaving, he asks if Władysław has any food, and when he sees the jar of pickles, he simply turns and walks away without another word. Władysław has no idea what to make of any of it. It turns out this house has just become a temporary German command post, and the officer who found him, Wilm Hosenfeld, is running it. Over the following days, Hosenfeld sneaks up to the attic and hands Władysław a package with fresh bread, jam, and a can opener, later warning him that the war is close to being over. Sure enough, within days, the Germans begin retreating. Before he leaves for good, Hosenfeld comes to say goodbye one final time, brings more food, and takes off his own military coat to give to Władysław for warmth. As they part ways, he asks Władysław's name and what he plans to do once the war ends. When Władysław says he intends to go back to performing on Polish radio, Hosenfeld tells him he will be listening. Władysław watches him disappear, stunned that the man who ultimately kept him alive turned out to be an enemy soldier he never even got the chance to thank properly. Days later, the Soviet Red Army finally liberates Warsaw. Władysław hears the news blasting from a broadcast truck below and rushes down to celebrate with the crowd, only to nearly get shot by his own liberators because he is still wearing the German officer's coat. He clears up the misunderstanding just in time, his appearance making his identity obvious enough, and when a confused Soviet soldier asks why on earth he is wearing an enemy uniform, Władysław simply answers, because it was cold. After the war, Hosenfeld himself ends up captured and sent to a Soviet prisoner of war camp. A man passing by is talking about his violin that was taken from him. Realizing he is a musician, he asked him about Władysław Szpilman. Hosenfeld tells him the whole story of how he helped hide him and begs the violinist to track Władysław down and try to help get him released in return. Before he can even give his name, Soviet guards force the two men to separate. Later, the violinist finally finds Władysław performing again on Polish radio and brings him straight to the former camp. But by the time they arrive, it has already been emptied out. Hosenfeld is gone, and Władysław is left to carry that unfinished debt of gratitude for the rest of his life, alongside everything else this war took from him. What gets me about this story is that it never lets you forget how thin the line was between survival and and death for people like Władysław, and how much of it came down to sheer, undeserved luck stacked on top of enormous personal courage. He did not survive because he was the bravest or the strongest. He survived because strangers kept choosing, again and again, to be decent in a world that had every incentive to make them cruel. That is the real takeaway here, that even in the absolute worst version of humanity, individual kindness still mattered, still saved lives, and still deserves to be remembered right alongside the horror. Władysław survived because, along his journey, strangers were willing to risk their lives to help him. And now I need a little help too. But thankfully, you won't have to risk your life for this one. All you have to do is help push this channel forward. You can like, share, or even subscribe if you enjoyed the recap. Whatever way you choose to support us, it will be greatly appreciated. As for the movie, I'm giving The Pianist a 9.5 out of 10. What would you rate this movie? Let me know in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.